welcome to the Connected Caroline Show. Today's episode, we have a really special guest. Her name is Vijaya Stern, and she is a Ayurvedic naturopath. And she's going to explain what that means and what her practice is all about, and get into the reasons why our wealth is in our health. Okay, so welcome to the show. And I would love for you to start off by explaining to my audience what Ayurvedic is and what a naturopath is, because not everybody knows what that is.
Okay, well, we'll start with Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is the East Indian system of healing. It's considered the oldest healing method on the planet. So it goes back at least 5,000 years, because that's how old they have recorded information, but possibly it's even older than that. So we consider it the mother of all healing. And naturopathy is the Western version almost of Ayurveda. So that's why I got my degree in both, so that I could do it in the West and have some kind of certification and all that before Ayurveda had certification. So now that they both do, I'm an Ayurvedic naturopath. So it covers all the bases all around the world now.
How does Ayurveda differ from Western medicine? And what sort of, what do you use to treat people in your practice?
So it's really different than Western medicine. Western medicine treats symptoms and Ayurveda treats cause. So in Ayurveda, we look at first and foremost the person's body type. And the way that the three body types in Ayurveda are understood is that they are connected to the five elements, which are ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And each one of these elements is all on its own, whole and complete in that particular expression of nature. But as they all work together, then they can create life. So for instance, I've got ether in my body, which means space. I've got air, which makes my hands move and my mouth talk and my eyes blink. I have fire that causes my digestive system to take something and transform it into muscles and bones and nerves, or take something that I see outside myself and transform it into information in my brain, or take information like reading or listening to a lecture and being able to digest that into knowledge. There's water in our body. As we know, we're about 80% water. So there's a lot of water in the body. And then there's the earth material in our body. One of the great things that Ayurveda says, which is so profound, is we think we're pretty much all earth beings. And that's why we forget that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. But we're so much of the time so caught up in the material world that we think our body is mostly earth material. But 99.99999, if I kept going for 12 nines, % of the inside of our body is actually empty space. And that other 0.0000, 12 zeros and 1% of our physical body is earth material. So that's a game changer right there. When you just contemplate that for a bit, you realize that we're pretty much empty space. And inside the empty space is a lot of air, a lot of fire, and a lot of water. And that is what really determines our body type. There's three. So fire, water, and earth are the three elemental body types, but we call them in Ayurveda Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So when the container gets filled up with too much of any of these elements, what occurs is one of those doshas, as they're known, causes an imbalance. So if I have too much air, I might be dry skin, dry hair, dry eyes, dry lips, dry tongue, constipation, gas, bloating, things that, take all the water away. Mm-hmm. If I have too much fire in my body, I'm going to have maybe heat rising and have a headache. I might have bloodshot eyes. I might have, distension and flatulence, which is more of a fermentative cause of gas in the body when it's been heated up, like when things in the sun might turn, a little moldy or yeasty or something.
Funky.
Yeah. And Then there's water. And when there's too much water, we're going to have water retention. We can have weight gain. We can get diabetes. We could have nausea. We might have too much volume in our blood, which could cause high blood pressure. So as we see these elements express themselves in excess, we also will see symptoms. So the goal is to alchemize the body in a way that we don't have an excess of any of them. There is also ether and earth that can go out of balance, but they're secondary expressions of the imbalance, not the primary. So that gets a little more advanced for our listeners today. So I'll just keep it at the 3 body types.
Yeah, so your toolkit or your medicine bag, I see those beautiful jars behind you. It's not just pretty decorating, it's the herbs that you use. Yes. When you meet with somebody, you mix herbs for them, specific, totally customized to them and what they're coming to you with their complaints of what's going on. And what else besides herbs? Well, let's talk a little bit about the herbs. Where do the herbs come from? What type of herbs are they? And how are they dispensed, basically?
Okay, well, let's back it up just a little because people are probably wondering at this point, how does she know what herbs to give people?
Yeah, true.
What I do is I take their pulse, and depending on if you're a man or a woman, and we'll determine which arm. A woman, I do their left arm, and a man, the right. And yet there's organs on both arms. So then I eventually have to switch for about 6 organs, and that's it. But once I get the pulses, and there's quite a few different levels to the pulse, and on each level, there's quite a few points. So it's pretty elaborate, and there's not a lot of people that can actually do it because it's really hard to even learn because you feel like your brain's going to blow up trying to get to the 5th level. And there's 5 points on just one finger that you have to determine what the imbalance is at each level. So anyway, once you get that information, or I get that information, I fill out one of my pulse sheets, or a pulse diagnosis sheet. And then from that, I have an herbal compound sheet, which has all these herbs. And there's about 120 or so herbs on the shelf. And from that list, I can look at the diagnostic sheet that I've done with the pulse, and along with the face, tongue, and eyes, I read. What I do is then I put together a formula that's going to correct that elemental alchemy at each level that I felt the pulses. So there's about 108 different things that I feel in the pulse. So just so you kind of get a picture of how broad I'm able to see what's going on in the body.
Obviously, you've had to have significant training. Have you trained all over the world for your craft? And like, why don't you talk a little bit about how you got to be one of the country's foremost Ayurvedic doctors or practitioners?
One of the ways is the most well-known Ayurvedic doctor in the world, Vasant Lad. It was my teacher, and he's been my teacher since 1982. So I'm one of the oldest students of Dr. Lad's, and he was the first person to bring Ayurveda to the West. So that qualified me quite a bit right there. And then for 8 years in the 80s, I put on all his workshops in California. So I got to study with him for quite a long time, where most people come to the program for 2 years and then they leave. I had him for 8 years, and then I went and did the official program at his institute, because obviously at our programs, we weren't going all the way to the extreme ends of Ayurveda because we were getting a lot of new people each workshop. So we couldn't do that. But working with him side by side, I also went with him to India and studied with some other doctors and other doctors from India. Then I went on to study here in the United States. That had come by then, and it had been about 10, 15 years after I'd studied with Dr. Lad that then I started branching out just to get other doctors, viewpoints, opinions, and methods that, everybody has their own way of doing things. And even now today, with the massive amount of students starting to study Ayurveda, we all practice a little bit different. Most of the students don't know pulse diagnosis unless they studied with Dr. Lad or myself, or there's a few other people that teach some of the pulses. Sometimes they'll just teach you how to feel your what's called Prakruti, or your constitutional pulse, and your Vikruti, which is just the overall three doshas and if they're out of balance. So it really depends on, the person's level of study and all that, what they've been able to, actually practice once they start that process.
So clearly you have passion for this. And what drove you to want to become an Ayurvedic naturopath? And what did you do before? Like, what was your journey like?
Well, before that, I was a mother, and I have three daughters that they're on their late 40s now. But as a young mother, I did stay home with my daughters. I thought that that was really the most important contribution I can make to the planet, is to get these children raised with a mom at home and feeding them well, juicing all day long, creating Ayurvedic meals and food and all that. So I did that for, until they were pre-teenage, and then they didn't care if I was home or not. They had their own little world starting. But at that point, then I decided I would get a job, and I became the manager of a big natural foods market here in Orange County, where I was the manager of the store and also the manager of the vitamin and herb department. So I got to learn a lot at that point, and I really knew that that was my passion. Along with, I had been doing yoga since I was about 14. And I even studied in high school, went and studied yoga. And so because of that, the nutritional background and the yoga background, when Ayurveda came to the West by my teacher, Dr. Lott, and he wrote his first book, I read that book within a day. I just devoured it. And at the end of the book, there was a phone number. So I thought, well, I'll call the phone number and find out what kind of programs they offer. Little did I know, he picked up the phone at his house, and this is pre-cell phone. So, we had our business number sometimes at our house, and he was just moving from Santa Fe to Albuquerque and opening up his institute. So he invited me to come study, and I told him that I was breastfeeding my youngest daughter at that time, and I couldn't really travel. So he invited me to come study with him in the summer up at Mount Madonna in Northern California, which had a great program with him for many years. And I said, I still can't go away and leave a nursing baby. So how about if you come here? And that's how our relationship started. And once it got going, there was no turning back for me. There was nothing else I wanted to do. And I was, in my late 20s when I met him. And then, by my late 30s, I started my practice. And it became, my career, and it has been now for over 30 some odd years. So why do you think that there are so many people interested in this type of healing? What do you think has sparked the interest of, a younger generation of all people from all stripes wanting to be an Ayurvedic practitioner? Part of it is how popular yoga is. I think that's a big part of it. And I think the millennials and those younger than the millennials even have really shown a big interest in yoga. And it's almost like, just been homogenized into our culture now. We use some Sanskrit words, and they're in our dictionary, like yoga, like karma, like mantra, like guru, right? We use those words now. And so they've been able to grow up on more of this Vedic culture, and they want more. It was exactly what I felt too. I wanted more. It was so intriguing to me because it so honored the human being as a spiritual being, and it so honored the body as a temple. And when you understand that, you want to take care of that temple because it houses the divine, and you realize that. And the more that you take care of that divine temple, the more the divine will enter. So it became a no-brainer. It wasn't about willpower anymore. It was about, my service to the divine, or my devotion, as my spiritual practice. My devotion to the divine was how well I took care of myself and taught others to do the same. Because in Ayurveda, when we talk about our body type, which is Prakruti, that word Prakruti also means the divine mother, or the feminine principle. And that each and every one of us is the female expression of the divine, just like we say Mother Earth or Mother Nature. we are the mother too in that regard. And it's our job to edify her and embody her as well as we can. And then the consciousness, which is the masculine divine energy, we can house that within us. And that's the union of opposites, which is really what yoga is all about.
So thank you for that. This may or may not be true, but the Beatles kind of brought the East Indian culture to the West, to the United States and to Europe, certainly, and certainly UK or England. And I mean, can it be used in conjunction with Western medicine and any other?
Sure, it's definitely a complementary medicine or an integrative medicine. And I think from an Ayurvedic point of view, we have a saying in Ayurveda that we all live by, which is everything in the universe is medicine and everything in the universe is poison, depending on who uses it, when they use it, and how they use it. So if you go out and pick some parsley and you eat it, most of the time that's going to not hurt you. But if you're a Vata body type, for instance, that dry, scratchy herb could irritate the intestinal lining a little bit. But if you went and took something like codeine, right, or prednisone, you're going to have a much bigger reaction to that because you may not need it and there are more side effects to it. So everything has a degree of how much it's medicine or poison, or who should use it and who should not use it, and when they should use it and when they're not going to use it. And the rules that we play this game by, even Western doctors, is much different than Ayurvedic doctors, because we're really looking at all the elements to determine that. And basically, they don't do that. They just say, here's a symptom, and we know this drug helps to suppress that symptom. We don't do any suppression in Ayurveda. We actually do cleansing and a balancing. So you can cleanse and balance your body and still take a Western medicine if necessary. So what we say in Ayurveda is diet first, lifestyle second, cleansing or detoxification third, herbs fourth, and medicine fifth, and surgery sixth, because we really don't want to, use dynamite to open up the safe if we know the combination, right?
Right. So great metaphor for it.
The combination to how to keep the body healthy. So why would we blow up the whole safe and not have the safe anymore? There's too many times there's an extreme end result that's not quite as good as we had hoped for when we use certain medications. So with all the side effects of the drugs. So
what are some resources that people can go to get, more information and learn more about Ayurvedic medicine?
Well, you can go to my website. I've got quite a bit of information, and that's www.livingrasa. So it's livingrasa.com. So that's one place. You can also go to just ayurveda.com, which is AYURVEDA.com. And that's Dr. Laud's website and the school's website. And I would also check out Banyan Botanicals. And Banyan Botanicals is some friends of mine started that company, and it's a whole Ayurvedic line. And it's a good place for resources for information on Ayurveda. And if you read something that you like about a specific herb or whatever, they're a source for that. So I think those are all really good starting points. Most people can, Google the word Ayurveda and get, more information than they could ever read. So there's obviously always that. But I like to go to my trusted sources, and those are the ones that I really trust because I know them all individually. And so, I know that there's a real purity in what they're, offering.
You just gave a resource that would help people find more about where to find herbs, but is there something that people should know about when they're choosing herbs and looking at herbs?
Yes, first and foremost, you want to make sure they're organic, and that's across the board, whether you get a Western herb or you get an Indian herb or a Chinese herb or an Amazon herb. You want to know that they're either wild crafted, which means they grew out in the wild, so they weren't ever sprayed or anything, or they're organic and they're certified organic. So everything that I use is certified organic or wild crafted. There's not a whole lot I have to get wild crafted because when it's shipped to this country, they certify it. So, from India. So we don't, have to worry about wild crafted, but once in a while I'll buy from a Western source like turmeric or something that's pretty common in the United States. And I might get it from a different source than my Indian source. And sometimes there might be a wild crafted herb here or there, or something from the Amazon where, they don't do a whole certification. It's just everything is organic. So
I have to ask, because the term plant medicine is so widely used now, which is referred to cannabis, or really is referring to cannabis and hemp. What do Ayurvedic practitioners work in that realm as well, or is it just strictly medicines that are not psychoactive? Like, does it matter? I don't know. What's the rule?
Again, everything's medicine. And everything.
Yeah.
That cannabis is included. And I'm smiling really big because when Dr. Lod, when I was graduating, Dr. Lod gave me my name, VEE-JI-A. And I love the name. I always loved the name. And I realized that it was my first and last name, birth name put together. So it was kind of interesting that he pulled that because he didn't know my last name. But anyway, it was the vibration that I hold that caused him to name me that. But later on, I was reading the Indian Materia Medica and just, studying it. And I opened the page and I was on the C pages, and I looked down and it was cannabis sativa on the page. And so I went, oh, great. They're going to tell me about how Ayurveda uses cannabis. I assumed they did, but this is way back in the 70s or 80s, or not 70s or 80s, 80s or 90s. And I was, not really using cannabis at the time myself, and it wasn't legal. So, there wasn't a lot of information about this kind of healing stuff, but I started reading it. And this first thing I got was, some of the English terms for cannabis sativa, like hemp and whatever. Then they gave the Sanskrit name for cannabis sativa, and it was VEE-JI-A. And so when I heard that, I realized, oh, I need to look into this medicine. This is my birth name or birthsake, or namesake, I guess I should say. And so I immediately delved into cannabis healing at that time. It was probably more the 90s, by that time when I discovered that, because it was after I went to the Institute. So it was probably around 95. So we were getting close and people were getting a lot more comfortable with cannabis. But I just had to laugh because, of all the medicines I could have been named after, because each one has, a beautiful, sometimes goddess name, one of the herbs or whatever, but I get cannabis sativa. So I think it's a powerful medicine, and there's a lot to learn about cannabis. And there is a lot of information in the Indian Materia Medica and other books now where they source a lot of their information from India. So, there's, as we know, different types of cannabis, and there's hemp, which really isn't psychoactive. And then there's cannabis that is psychoactive because of how much THC to CBD ratio it has.
Right.
So we use both. We use CBD for certain things, and we use cannabis for other things. Cannabis really can potentize the power of these herbs behind me. So if someone's body isn't receiving the herbs well, sometimes using a little cannabis with it will just relax the cells open and allow them not to be in that reactive state, just like it does if we happen to take some tincture or something internally, we relax. So as above, so below, as within, so without. So it's working on us on the cellular level and on the whole self level.
Wonderful. It's very, very interesting. And I personally want more people to know about Ayurvedic medicine and to be curious and to implement it into their lives, because it certainly has helped me tremendously in my search and journey through hormones and thyroid and just everything. It's just been a blessing. I'm very lucky that Vijaya lives in my community. So, it's a very special place here that we live, and she happens to be living here. So we got a little vortex here. So wrapping up, I'm curious, what are your plans? Do you have a product line? What are your plans? What are your dreams? Like, what's your next thing that you want to do within your passionate business that you've got going?
Yeah. Well, because of my age, I'm almost 67. I'm not really looking to like how I'm going to like do this big, new venture. That's just not what's in the cards for me. And one of the things in Ayurveda, we talk about the 4 stages of life. And I am in what's called the Dharma phase. And that's where you go into your spiritual Dharma, or your purpose, your spiritual purpose. And you explore how it is that you can go deeper into that state of knowing who you are. And I've done that, of course, my whole life, because Ayurveda really encourages that. But at this stage of my life, that's about all I want to do.
Right.
I love my clients, and I will probably practice till the day I leave this body, but I, don't feel like I have to pursue anything like I did when I was younger. And Dr. Law did take me aside personally and say, I don't want you to strive to go out and become very public, write books, be popular. And I had my own little, days of glory that just kind of happened, but I didn't put effort into that. And I put more effort into just healing my community and the people that I love. And if they liked it, they spread it. And that's kind of how I actually became, a nationwide, for sure, teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I started teaching at many schools, just because there weren't a lot also at the time that, I was able to start moving into the teacher position. So that helps quite a bit. But I love teaching right now, and I'm teaching at the Ayurvedic Living School. So if there's anyone in your audience that wants to study more, the Ayurvedic Living School is a wonderful all-women ran school. And we have all women teachers, except actually a client of mine who I turned onto the school, and he went through the program. And I've heard he's actually going to now teach something in our program. So he's the honorary guy. Otherwise, it's all women run, and they're really amazing women from the Humboldt County area. And they've put together such a wonderful program that I've actually taught for one of the women who had a school up there for years that I used to go up and teach, but now it's an all online course. And it's really about honoring the feminine and creating, the healers that we know that we are so much of the time. So it's really an opportunity for anybody to just get on, even like we do spring retreats. I just taught a spring retreat, and it was just a 1-day event. And it talked about, the magic of spring and what happens in the Vedic tradition in spring, and how we can honor the kapha season, which is one of the 3 doshas, and its period of time. So you'll learn, little tidbits like that. You don't have to go through the whole program, but
that would be great. All the information will be in the notes section, so people can find all the links and details, so they can start pursuing and checking out those workshops and more about Ayurvedic medicine. Last question, and that is kind of a fun question. And I ask my guests, what's your favorite thing that you love right now? It could be a food, a place, a movie, a book, it could be a person, but like, is there something that you're just like, crazy about that you want to share with the audience? Like, you gotta get this product or this.
Right now, my crazy thing is going out in my garden and working.
Yeah.
Working in my garden.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
To do it. And I wasn't a gardener my whole life, but I do have a green thumb because I'm growing orchids, and everybody just is blown away at how many orchids I have and how, many stalks are on them and how beautiful my house looks with orchids in it, but I never pursued a vegetable garden on a hill and start growing fruit trees and putting in steps and gravel and, just turning it into a little wonderland. So I'm at the beginning of that process, but I just can't wait to get out there every day and just commune with the squirrels and the rabbits and the birds, and everybody's coming back in. It's like all of nature is coming to play with me. And it's a little challenging when I've planted my whole vegetable garden and I look out and there's a squirrel inside the cage that I built for my vegetable garden the other day, and all my leafy greens were gone, every variety possible. And so I have to kind of start over in there, but I'm learning how to be in rhythm with nature and honor nature, because they need to eat too, so they're allowed to be in the compost bin because there's a lot of fresh food in there that they can eat. So that's their place, and I'm learning how to communicate in a way that they get it. So
I love that. I mean, I also am very excited about growing my own food. And so I can relate to that. I identify with the joy of being out there and, like you said, making it magical and communicating with the plants, and, it's fun, and the animals. So thank you for that. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show and, for educating the audience on Ayurvedic medicine and, what they can, just getting a taste of what it's all about. And like I said, there'll be plenty of information in the notes where you can get deeper into the, go down the rabbit hole, so to speak, of how you can incorporate this into your life. Because I think it is absolutely a wonderful modality. Like you said, it's the oldest, probably the oldest way of healing on the planet, right?
Yeah, and just to kind of close this whole thing up in a way that there's no intimidation. I don't want people, let's say, that are Islamic or Christian or some other religion than, let's say, more of the Hindu or Vedic religion, think that this medicine isn't for them. It's outside of religion, and yet it has its own philosophy that any religion could relate to. And I have a lot of, for instance, Christian clients and Islamic clients, and they're all attracted to it, not because of it coming from India, like some of us Westerners, might, because of yoga, but more because it's all natural and it takes everything from the earth, and it honors that the earth is here to heal us and that we don't have to look further than that, and people like that. It doesn't matter what color you are, what religion you are, what gender you are, what preferences you have, it works for everybody. And I think you can't say that for any other healing practice almost. So, because there's certain people that, might not do something, like a Christian Scientist may not do the medications because they don't believe in going to doctors, but they would do Ayurveda,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. That's a good way to close up this interview. I appreciate that. And yes, I hope to have you on again sometime. And thank you for your time. And this is Vijaya Stern, the wonderful Ayurvedic naturopath, who I know and am very grateful for that she's in my life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. I love having you in my life too. So love that.
Okay. Well, we'll speak to you soon.
All
and
right.
For my audience, until next time, this is Caroline with Connected Caroline. Make it a giving day.